Hello everyone, Paul Elam here from A Voice for Men with part 2 of my series entitled The Plague of Modern Masculinity. And we'll begin today with just some dry facts about the hierarchy of men. Despite the numerous male archetypal figures of history and legend, there are truly only 4 basic types of men. 3 of the more commonly known are the alphas, betas, and omegas. The 4th I will address later. Alpha males are a very small fraction of the male population. They are highly dominant men who reside at or near the top of all populations, from social groups to national governments. These men are generally characterized by the ability to force the deference of other men, often mistaken for leadership, and to obtain and hold power, which lends them a dominance in being selected for mating by the most desirable females. There's no evidence to suggest that this is any different now than it has been at any other time in history, and there's no way to underestimate the importance of the mating strategy in the phenomena of the alpha male. But success often has its price. Alphas also tend to be obsessively controlling, abusive, and megalomaniacal. If you point to any despot in world history that slaughtered scores of his own people for the need to maintain control or for sheer sadistic pleasure, you're pointing at an alpha male. With alphas, you can throw your imagined codes of honor out the window. Those codes are nothing more than tools used to force the betas and omegas into compliance with their agendas. All romanticism aside, the code of the alpha male is to conquer and control both the objects of his desire and the men he exploits and expends to acquire them. Characterologically speaking, they are a minute, worst representation of the male of the species, but they also get things done, and with great efficiency, if you don't factor away the loss of freedom and human life. Incidentally, their characteristics are also the same ones that feminists have erroneously used to define masculinity in one broad stroke, painting all men as domineering and oppressive. Success at this enabled them to take other microscopic minorities of men and attribute their characteristics to men in general as well. For example, abusers, pedophiles, and rapists. Historically, the challengers to alphas frequently came from other alphas, and often from the ranks of beta males who form the next tier down in the male power structure. Betas serve as the alpha's enforcers, the strong arms used to maintain control over greater numbers. They also play the role of yes men, affording them their own realm of power and putting them within striking distance, or rather scavenging proximity, of the alpha's position and status, including sexual primacy. Like roadies for a rock band, fortune often filters its way into the beta's hands and into their beds. Now, at the bottom and most heavily populated part of the hierarchy are the omega males. These are the pawns on a chessboard, often under the direct control of alpha or by proxy beta males. This is the common man and the one most vulnerable to the hazards of common life. A good way to look at this is to take a look at the military chain of command. The general tendency is that alphas, betas, and omegas shed increasing amounts of blood in descending order, and that they claim the spoils of victory in ascending order. Government runs pretty much in the same way. In the simplest of terms, alpha lawmakers use beta law enforcement officers to exercise their will on the generally omega population. Or rather, government used to work that way, but it really doesn't anymore. 40 years ago, we came to the biggest political sellout in history, and it changed the world. Alpha males in government didn't just collude with feminist ideologues in order to garner a sizable and dependable voting bloc. Those men had wives to contend with, many of whom were supporting feminism, which effectively reduced everything to the biological imperative. Alpha males are no less and arguably even more disposed to take whatever measures are necessary to ensure their sexual status and their access to women. Faced with a perceived threat to that, they effectively ceded the alpha position and became beta enforcers for the feminist agenda. You won't find better examples of that than Barack Obama or Joe Biden, or George Bush for that matter. These alphas became the beta muscle for a feminist mafioso, maintaining rank and privilege through enforcing ideological imperatives on the defenseless masses beneath them. They became cops hauling men to jail on the simple accusation of their wives. They became judges bludgeoning men with their gavels in corrupt courtrooms, politicians passing ever more misandric legislation, CEOs of pharmaceutical companies pushing drugs like Ritalin to sap the vitality and strength out of our boys, to make them more malleable in female hands once the father had been forcibly removed from the home. Isn't this ironic? The supposed pinnacle of strength in the male hierarchy was revealed by feminism to actually be the pinnacle of sexual weakness. This series of events is also a lesson in real power and where it resides, which in the realm of sexual selection has always been in the hands of the women who did the selecting. But an even greater irony is revealed. Women who have bemoaned a lack of power for ages, and in fact still do, found out 4 decades ago that all they had to do to gain almost complete control was step up and demand it be handed over, playing the sex card as they did so. And it was handed over by the most powerful men in the world, who in the presence of these women became like butlers offering cocktails on a serving tray. I'm not particularly fond of that conclusion. In fact, as a man who continually struggles to break old world ties, I'm rather embarrassed by it. But nothing learned, nothing gained. Nonetheless, what happened here on the whole was that women, their raw biological power masquerading as feminism, have taken the dominant alpha status in our culture, and the result is quickly becoming an age of oppression and injustice more insidious and intractable than any other. It is in the biological, survival-oriented nature of women to enhance their lives through the utilization of male labor and male expendability, without compunction or moral constraint. And that is exactly what our culture has ended up doing on an Orwellian scale. Defeating this monstrosity requires the insanely formidable task of battling through beta enforcers masquerading as alpha controllers, not to a command post with someone in charge, but through a pervasive ideology that snakes like countless invisible tentacles through the consciousness of the population at large, and that emanate from the very heart of human evolutionary psychology. And the first strike in that battle must be, at the elements of masculinity that allowed it to happen. And that brings me to the conclusion of part 2 to the plague of modern masculinity. I do hope you will enjoy me for part 3. Thanks for listening.